Trysta Krick tweets out Angel Reese unanimously being voted an all-star starter by the fans, media, and players, yet somehow not starting the all-star game is insane. She's the co-founder of the DailyW Sports, and she joins us now. Trysta, I love this tweet. Explain this to us. How did we get here? How did we get to this point? I should mention Angel herself said, quote, "I expect to be disrespected." What's going on with the treatment of Angel Reese?
Well, it really has to do with how they weight the fan vote versus the media vote versus the player vote. And Natasha Howard had I think she had just a slight bit of a tick where she was ranked fourth ahead of Angel. But to me, like the issue is that Gabby Williams was considered a forward. And to me, Gabby Williams has always been a guard hybrid and definitely a player that plays more on the perimeter. And she ends up becoming an all-star starter and bumping out Angel Reese. So, and then you look at also for the rest of the team, Ryan Howard also didn't make the starter roster. She's third in the league in win share. She's averaging almost 20 a game. And she probably did that to herself because the funny story is that earlier preseason, one of the fans of hers, like a super fan Stan account, posted a photo of Ryan Howard's media day, and Ryan Howard sort of lost her mind on social media, called her out directly, said that she hates when people release her photos from media day before she can do it herself, even though it was publicly on Getty. It became a huge thing on social media, and the fans sort of turned against her. So the players ranked her, I think, second in the league. The media ranked her fourth, and the fans ranked her ninth. And that ninth spot really bumped her down a ton. So the Atlanta Dream in general are being disrespected, I think, a little bit.
I don't disagree with you in the slightest because you bring up Ryan Howard and Angel Reese. I'll throw Alicia Gray in there. I thought between the three of them, there could be at least have been some fair representation for the Atlanta Dream and the WNBA All-Star starters. Obviously, there is not. So if that is the case, if we feel like one, if not all three of them in some form or fashion were snubbed as All-Star starters, do we think that the process of voting for All-Star starters needs to be reevaluated?
Yeah, that's a good point, especially considering I feel like I've always felt like, this is a fan event, but fans don't always know exactly who should be a starter. And there's, even in the men's side, there's always been this disconnect between, is it the best players or is it the best players that are having the best season? Is it the most electric players? Are they the most popular players? And that's why you would weight it between players, media, and fans all together. But I think that there's a little bit of a disconnect between, say, someone like Ryan Howard, who is third in the league in win shares, as I said, and someone that the fans won't even get behind to be a starter, even close to a starter, as being ranked ninth. So to me, yes, but at the same time, I'm super conflicted because this literally is a fan event where the fans want to see certain players, and sometimes that leads to disrespect.
Every time we talk about Angel, we know this, like it's just polarizing. People always have some big, loud opinion. What can ever happen to get us to the point where we just talk about Angel, the WNBA player, without everybody having some sort of a predisposition one way or the other?
Nothing. I don't think anything will ever change there. I think that there's going to be some level of discourse between Caitlyn and Angel, and that will be kind of, I think it's in stone. I think that's inked. But I think in general, the WNBA lacks that level of context. You see how the Alyssa Thomas flagrant foul was discussed. When this happens on the men's side, it's just a flagrant foul. When it happens on the women's side, it's like World War II, World War III. Everybody's going crazy. Everybody's losing their mind about what it means, and it becomes so much bigger than the game of basketball. And really, it was like all happening within the lines. So to me, it's a WNBA problem. I think it's a fan problem. It's the fact that we have a lot of new fans that maybe don't watch the WNBA before Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese came into the league. So to me, I don't think it ends. Maybe 10, 12 years of her being in the league, we stop talking about it, but I just don't think so. I think that those fans that feel so negatively towards Angel Reese for whatever reason continue to find reasons to slander her, despite the fact that she just became the fastest player in WNBA history to reach 1,000 career rebounds, getting there in just 79 games.
But we don't talk about that because that doesn't fit the narrative, right? And I think that Angel Reese is a microcosm for the discussion and the discourse about the modern day WNBA. You can't say, hey, I think Caitlin Clark is a good player without people thinking one way about you. You can't say, hey, I think Paige Beckers is a good player without the Caitlin Brigade coming for you. It is astonishing for me as somebody that has covered the league now for just over a year, just to hear the overreaction, I will say, on social media about the way that we talk about individual players. Why?
Yeah,
How did we get here?
you're right. I don't have any clue about how you can talk about Caitlin Clark when we talk about her on the podcast on Let Her Shoot, where you can find on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast twice a week. Like sometimes we hold Caitlin accountable, things that she does, how she treats refs, how she's not playing defense. Sometimes we talk about what she's done as a passer and as a scorer and as, one of the faces of the league. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But like, no matter how you speak about her, the other group is going to come after you and say that you're not being fair to her. It's this that she's like the center of the universe in those people's minds. And no matter what you say, it implies either hatred or overlove for her. And the same thing is true, like you said, with Paige. We had a whole discussion about how electric Paige was and how she's become, this Kyrie Irving-esque player in the WNBA. And it was like, well, you don't give Caitlin this credit. How come you don't say this about? And it's like, nobody's like, why is Caitlin even a part of this discussion right now? Same thing obviously is happening with Angel Reese. If you talk about Angel, somehow fans are talking about Caitlin. Those players don't play on the same team. They rarely play against one another. It's a moment that happened in time in college that now has inextricably linked them. And it's unfair. And I really don't know why. We got there, other than the fact that both of them together created this iconic moment that really excited and electrified fans, where it moved from LSU and Iowa to now the Indiana Fever, Chicago Sky, and now the Atlanta Dream.
It is wild the number of times they say, well, you never. It's like, are you consuming every ounce of the work that we do? Because I think we try to be pretty fair and balanced on all of it, but a 15-minute soundbite doesn't accomplish that. Much like Lisa Leslie coming out and saying that A'ja is the face of the league, which created great discourse about whether or not A'ja Wilson can be the face of the league, or is she the best player of the league? All of these conversations. What did you make of Lisa's comments?
It's funny because you kind of think about how older players talk about, the league as a whole. And sometimes you think about what exactly their motivations are. A'ja is, to me, one of the faces of the league. Absolutely. She's the best player in the league. She probably will go down as one of the greatest players of all time, if not the greatest player of all time. The amount of MVPs, the amount of Defensive Player of the Years, the amount of championships, how she puts a team on her back. Her shoe line has done really well. She's clearly a very marketable player. But I think in general, we can't say that there's one face of the WNBA. Right? Like, especially considering that you can't look at one individual player and say definitively that that's her, because A'ja is not as marketable or as bringing in new fans as someone like Caitlin did, right? 17.5 million new fans were added in 2024. That was the same year that Caitlin Clark and Angel were drafted, right? That's something to look at. You look at Paige and all of the new fans that Paige and even AZ to a degree coming over from UConn have brought over, this new Gen Z wave. I go and watch them in the arena, and there's fans waiting above the tunnel, hoping and wishing for their autographs. You see the stud buds and them being on the cover of Vogue. I think right now where we're at in the league is that there is not one. And when someone definitively says it's this player, they're either being coached by their producer to choose, or they're making a statement about who the face of the league is not.
I want to stick on the Aces for a moment because I'm going to be very honest and transparent here. I've had a hard time covering the Aces or finding some big sweeping judgment about the Las Vegas Aces, because anytime they might lose a game, not look their best, I think back to that 20-30 point loss to the Wings just a couple of weeks ago, I can't draw large conclusions about it because I have this Aces benefit of the doubt that I know they're going to figure it out. A'ja Wilson even said it. She was like, when we lose, they're just lessons, and we learn from those lessons. And then when they win, and they win in gaudy fashion, I think, well, that's just what the Aces do. And I want to hold myself accountable in that, right? Because I don't feel like I'm giving the Aces enough investment or attention. How have you evaluated this Aces squad this season?
Same way, right? Like it's the same to me as the Liberty, right? Until they're dead, they're a contender, pretty much. Like
Mhm.
I learned my lesson last year when the Aces looked dead and buried, and we were slandering them about, okay, Chelsea Gray doesn't look herself. She's looking like a little bit long in the tooth. Jewel Lloyd is coming off the bench. She doesn't look like herself. It can't just be Asia. Jackie Young is really good, but are those two enough? And then they rattle off 19 straight wins. And, Chelsea Gray comes in championship form back like she turned back the clock. Jackie Young is still herself. Jewel Lloyd had some critical moments, and they find a way to win another title. So to me, I'm not going to be dumb enough to count them out, no matter what is going on in the middle of the season. When it comes down to winning time, and it's the best player in the league, and I think Jackie Young is one of the most potent scorers in the league, and Chelsea Gray may be the best point guard of all time, you just really can't count them out. And then Becky Hammon as one of the best coaches in WNBA history, and I think the best coach in the WNBA right now.
I mean, Trysta, I keep saying this, but to me, I love horror movies. They are Michael Myers. Every time you think at the end of a movie, Michael
Yes.
Myers is dead, doesn't matter. You
Yes.
can see him lit on fire. You can see him beheaded. Doesn't matter. 3 years later, he found a miraculous way. That is what the Aces have become. All right, so from the Aces evolution to the officiating evolution, we've talked a lot about it on this show. Officiating has it's been controversial this year. What do you make of how they've done so far and how they're evolving throughout the course of the season?
I mean, I think in general, the refereeing in the WNBA deserves a ton of criticism year after year after year. It feels like they don't have presence of mind to understand what matchups are going to be spicier. It feels like sometimes they're letting them play like it's, the Spurs versus the Knicks. And sometimes, just a little slap on the wrist is a foul, and you're not really sure what they're going to call and when. The consistency hasn't been there. I understand they want freedom of movement, but we're getting super long games. We're getting a ton of free throws, but we're still getting those very controversial, flagrant moments that are not called as well. And so to me, it's like the worst of both worlds. If I'm the league commissioner, I'm taking a look at the All-Star break like we've seen, in NBA seasons, where it's like, okay, we got to lock in and really get clear about what is a foul, what is not, and how you should be officiating when there's clearly rivalries where the physicality gets ramped up, and certain players that play a level of physicality where players have gotten injured. Alyssa Thomas is a phenomenal player. She made a play against Nafisa Collier in the playoffs last year where we haven't even seen Nafisa Collier this year. So I think just them locking in on how to control the game and still keep whatever goals that they're trying to enact in terms of freedom of movement is really important when we get to the All-Star break.
I mean, there's no doubt the league is better when the stars are on the court. So the referees need to do their jobs to make sure that they're protecting all players to make sure that they can remain on the court. And there's no doubt that all
Indeed.
eyes will be on the refereeing in the Fever-Mercury matchup that we have coming up in just a couple of days. Of course, the third iteration of that matchup, and the first two, we're not short of any sort of controversy and conversation. What are you looking for in that matchup?
Say that again. You just cut out.
Sorry, what are you looking for in this third matchup that we'll have between the Fever and the Mercury on the July 9th?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that Caitlin plays. Like, truly, I think that's number one. I think we want to see her healthy. I want to see her play. I want to see the temperature come down between Alyssa Thomas and Dewana Bonner and the rest of the Mercury. I mean, the rest of the Fever. Excuse me. Remember, Dewana Bonner played for the Fever and left the team midway through the season, and we never really ever got clarity why. And when I talked to people around the team, it was all about, around the Fever, excuse me. It was about Caitlin. It was about how much of a heliocentric player she is. It was about the vibe around the team. And clearly Caitlin's teammates love her. Dewana Bonner, according to the people that I've talked to, really didn't like playing with her. And so I think that has elevated the temperature. Alyssa Thomas is in a relationship with Dewana Bonner, and they've been together for a long time. That doesn't have nothing to do with the temperature that's raised between these two teams. We've had Alyssa Thomas say things about how the Fever were one of the most quote unquote bigoted fan bases in the WNBA. There's a lot there. Honestly, I just want to see Clea Copper get her shot back. I just want to see Alyssa Thomas, get to the rim. I just want to see the Mercury figure out what they're doing because they don't have a lot going well for them offensively. They lack draft picks. Their young players aren't playing well. One of their best players, Nogic, went overseas for the rest of the season, left like a thief in the night. And so, truly, I just want to see everybody have fun and no flagrants and nothing to be talking about in the same way that we did in that last matchup.
Trysta, real quick, at what point are we concerned about Caitlin's injuries?
Now. I think an ongoing back issue is something that you have to be evaluating as something that could potentially dog her whole career. I hope not. I mean, I talked about this on the podcast, but I also think her hip mobility is a bit of an issue, which causes low back pain. I think it also affects her ability to, shift her hips like we see from, defensive backs in football. Like that's such a key component of playing defense. I think that there's some things that she needs to work on with mobility that may help her back. But I think anytime you have that as an ongoing issue, now we have multiple years that this same injury has spanned. We've also seen hamstring injury. We've seen calf injury, all kind of related to that same type of kinetic chain. That's something that I absolutely worry about, and the league should be thinking about, and the Fever should be thinking about as well. And that's kind of why I feel like she shouldn't play in this Phoenix matchup if she's not 100% right. And even last year, we had her come back and then have a setback and then not play in the All-Star game and then not play again.